Turn your living room into a joyful, hands-free playroom with CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ. Your child sings, moves, and learns right alongside JJ and friends, all on the big screen. It's designed thoughtfully to spark speech, rhythm, and coordination through songs and active play. Try an ad-free, safe, and interactive way to make screen time part of their learning and growth. Parents love how easy it is, voice-controlled and frustration-free. Kids love every moment of singing, laughing, and playing along. It's fun for them, and it's feel-good for you. Available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Just search Volley in your TV's app store and start your free trial of CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ today. That's CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ, available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Search Volley and start your free trial today.
Volley. Welcome to Homeschooling Outside the Box, the podcast that encourages and equips moms to homeschool an outside-the-box child. Today, I've got Steve Demme, creator and founder of Math-U-See, which, for those of you who don't know, is a manipulative-based math curriculum. I've got him on the line today. Steve, say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So I have had the pleasure of using Math-U-See for years with our boys, and I actually had the pleasure of reviewing the curriculum in 2015. I got to do a blog post, so I will link to that for listeners who might want to read it. But that's how I found out about Steve Demme and Math-U-See. But Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and how Math-U-See came to be.
Well, you're living in northern Alabama.
Correct.
I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I heard the gospel when I was a teenager, recommitted my life to Christ when I was in college, and went to seminary in New England, met a wonderful young lady up there, and we got married. And then our first assignment was with a small church just outside of Atlanta. And while we were down in Atlanta, because it was a small church, they suggested that I could get a part-time job in addition to doing like assistant to the pastor and youth group responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long before I was substitute teaching in the public high school. And then I was a full-time teacher, and I really enjoyed teaching. I didn't think that I would. And I had to go to Georgia State in the summers, pick up my education classes and the rest of my math classes to have a semi-degree. And then my fourth son was born with Down syndrome. We were already committed to home education, and it was just a stretch because stretch is probably understatement. My wife and I both burned out his first year because he had almost died of a virus at 3.5 months, open heart surgery at 8 months, intestinal surgery at 10 months, and several catheterizations before that. So we spent a lot of time in the hospital, and I felt like our family was our first priority. So I withdrew from all my responsibilities in Georgia, and we moved to Massachusetts, where I taught at a Christian school to get our family back together. Then I started a one-man co-op resource. This was back in the late 80s, and there weren't even a lot of co-ops in New England, but I would go in and do a little bit of math, a little bit of science, a little bit of PE, whatever they wanted, just try and put food on the table.
Sure.
And one group of parents wanted me to not just help them with their math program once a week, but to be the entire math program. So I gulped, and I started teaching them manipulatives on Monday, and then I would give them 4 worksheets to do for review and practice and word problems on Tuesday through Friday. And at the end of 25 weeks, I had 100 worksheets, and the kids had covered 2.5 years of math. And so that was the beginning of Math-U-See. And home educators are great networkers. They told their friends, and that was the beginning. So that was my first book I wrote in 1990. And I just kept responding to people's requests to write additional material and improve the product. And I did that. And here's where we are today. Wow.
That is incredible. I didn't know all of that background. That's Very
Well,
interesting.
if I can just put a little plug in here.
Yes, please.
Well, I'm revising my Math-U-See Stewardship, which is consumer math from a Christian perspective. And
Hmm.
the original one I wrote was in 2008, and so a revision was in order, but I ended up adding several units, and a couple of the units were on starting your own business, being an entrepreneur, where I tell way more information, probably more than you want to know, about how I started the program, what I learned about working for others, what I learned about having my own business. And we have several podcasts, which I could probably find you the numbers that correspond to the book that I did on buildingfaithfamilies.org, because I had so much information when I was writing the book that I ended up doing a couple podcasts. So if people want to learn more about Math-U-See and being an entrepreneur and having your own business, I'll give it to you and you can add it to the link. How about that?
That sounds wonderful. And yep, for anyone listening who's working out at the gym right now or washing dishes or driving in your car, I will put all these links in the show notes. So you'll be able to come back to it and click on that and find that. I'm so glad you brought up the stewardship. I was wondering because I saw it disappear from the shop when we had the last purchase that I made for our math books. I saw that it wasn't there. So I didn't know if you'd done away with it. So it's good. It's good to see that it's being revised. And I bet there's so much, I mean, just in these 10, 11 years, entrepreneurship and at-home businesses, I bet that's so much more relevant today with the internet.
Well, not only is that, but I'm really quick. So you look at my podcast, number 178 through 183 is launching your own business.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, I know that's going to be something people will want to see. Definitely. All right. So, Steve, let me ask you, when you started back, you said late 80s, you started Math-U-See, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
89, I was teaching, and 90, I had something in print.
Wow. Okay. So when you started then, what was it that made you go for mastery? I know that's one of Math-U-See's claims to fame is that it's a mastery approach. So what made you go that direction instead of, which I assume is probably more popular in the school systems, the spiral approach? And can you tell us kind of the differences as you explain why you chose mastery?
Okay. So you're asking really good questions. I can see why you have a podcast. So I'm going to do my best to answer them. When I walked into the public high school, by the way, with no education classes and not a complete math degree, in fact, I'm still not certified according to the government, I found that the classes I was teaching, I taught geometry, I taught trigonometry, I taught the upper level, the whole spectrum of high school math. What I found was the geometry and the algebra was not that difficult. It was that the kids didn't have a good foundation. They hadn't really mastered multiplication and fractions. Mm-hmm. Since then, I've read studies that they're called correlations, that how well you do in multiplication, division, and fractions will be a big determiner of how well you're going to do in algebra. Because just take fractions, for example. In algebra, we have fraction exponents. We have fractional equations. So if you don't understand fractions, it's not the algebra that's going to be the fly in the ointment, so to speak. It's your foundation. So when I started writing books, or when I would tutor, and I learned more from tutoring than I did from classroom instruction, because tutoring, you have to find out where the child is and start there. And when I was tutoring kids, I found out that you have to go back and find out what they know and then begin to build. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think mastery and spiral mean the same thing to everybody. So let me just say what I think they mean. Okay. For me, I want a child to know their addition facts, multiplication facts before I teach them subtraction and division. Because subtraction and division are just the inverses of addition and multiplication. But if you know, and when I mean know, if I say 6 times 7, they say 42. They don't have to pray. They don't have to look up in the sky. This is just, they know it. And that, when you know something, then it frees up the rest of your brain to learn a new concept. But if you're still trying to remember what 6 times 7 is, and I'm asking you how many floor tiles go into a bathroom that's 6 times 7, So part of your brain is focusing on memorizing the fact. The other part of your brain is trying to decide whether you add 6 and 7 or do I multiply 6 times 7?
Right.
And you're going to have frustrated kids because they're going to end up missing something. But if they've already mastered their foundation, then it frees them up and they can begin thinking about the concept of area versus perimeter, et cetera. So I just think that there's a chunk of math that you need to master, and math is one of the few sequential subjects. And what I mean by sequential, if a child has a problem in division, okay, usually the problem isn't division. The problem is they don't know how to multiply. They don't know how to subtract.
Right.
They don't understand place value, because division is the first time that they've had to use all three of those operations at the same time. And so when somebody says to me, I have a problem with borrowing, for example, double-digit subtraction, my first question is, how are their regrouping skills or carrying? Because borrowing is the opposite of carrying. And if they don't know carrying, then I'm going to probe a little further. How much do they understand place value? How about their addition facts? So does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And that actually, I've got another question, a spinoff. So with the opposites, okay, my one son has dyslexia, and and I don't know enough about I'm going to mess up how to say this, dyscalculia.
Dyscalculia.
Is that correct? Okay, dyscalculia. So I don't know enough about that. He could also have that. I know that's common that the two go together. So when you're talking about opposites, I'm thinking of my son. I mean, you can almost you can see the gears turning at this excruciating rate when he's trying. He's got we're right now in the end of beta, like the 4. Beta is one of the levels of Math-U-See for anyone listening who's not familiar with Math-U-See yet. So 4-digit multiplication, and you're, crossing over, you're borrowing, and it is excruciating. I mean, there are days where we get through like 2 to 4 problems and we just have to take a break because it's just so arduous. So you would say, I mean, for kids who really struggle with flipping numbers, and I think, would you say you see a connection that they're flipping the processing as well in terms of carrying, they don't know, do I carry, do I borrow? And then how would you say is that just time spent, repetition? Is that the trick to getting them over that?
Okay. Now, special needs kids are a whole different podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's our audience, so we might want to dovetail over to special needs kids, because that's our focus. Let
me back up a little bit and let me just talk about mastery and spiral, and then we'll try to address those. So, what I'm saying is that you want to move at a child's pace. So, a typical child, if he can learn his adding plus 3 in a week, let's say, then we're going to, once he's mastered those addition by 3, then we're going to do adding by 9 perhaps, or we're going to add doubles or something. But what I'm saying is that mastery means is that we want to give children a chance to really know the material before they move to the next lesson. And in my humble opinion, only tutors can do that, which is what a homeschooler is.
Sure.
It's really tough to do that when you got 30 kids in your class, because you're going to lose some are going to fall asleep, some will never get it. All right. But when you've only got one child, you can focus on them. Now, that's different than spiral, which is where you just keep going through. Let's say that there's 50 topics they want to teach you in kindergarten through 6th grade. They're going to hit all 50 topics for 6 years and hope that maybe you have them by the end of the 6 years. My mother was a public school teacher, and she was a title whatever, expert in math. And she said, but a lot of those kids don't get it. And they just need the time to master it before movement. So that's what I mean by mastery. Now, when you say spiral, that's what I think that the public schools mean. Right. But what I like to say is we also have a lot of reinforcement in the sense that all of our lessons have 3 practice pages to help you master, but they also have 3 review pages to help you not lose the stuff you've already lost. So I don't really feel like we're a spiral at all. I just feel like we're mastery before movement and a whole bunch of time to review the stuff you've already learned in the past, even though there's a whole bunch of review built into math. Like vision uses all the previous things. All right, now you shifted gears on me and you went to
sorry.
special needs. It's all right. So now when you talk about special needs children, first of all, let me just say I know enough to be dangerous because my 4th boy has Down syndrome, and that's a big part of our world is working with people with special needs.
Sure.
And I get the wonderful emails from people like you who said, my child has dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia, and it works for them. I've got kids with autism that it works for them. People with Down syndrome, it works for them. It didn't work for my kid, but everybody else's. So, but what's interesting is I don't know why. My only theory is that we're just using more of the brain. We're building it, we're writing it, we're saying it, we're touching it, we're feeling it, we're coloring. If I could make them scratch and sniff, I would probably
use every sense.
Yes. And now we have some people who are some of our reps that you might want to interview at another point who have been trained and they've worked with Diane Kraft, and they know a lot more about how Math-U-See helps people with learning inefficiencies, I'm going to call it, than I do.
Well,
I just do. All I know is, to me, it's a miracle. No, I'm not making this up. It's a God thing, because when I wrote Math-U-See, I just wrote what God had placed on my heart, and I just did. I used the gifts and experiences that I had at the time. I moved at the child's pace. I gave them child time to master. And then, you know what I found out? This is how a lot of the nations that are much more successful in America, like in Eastern Europe, that's how they operate. They first master it, and instead of trying to do 50 things a year, just do 5 to 10 things and do them well, and then build on that foundation. And what I also find, even though we kind of poo-poo some of the things that the world, the flesh, and the devil offers, attitude really is important. And if you feel like in your heart, I like math, math is doable, I can figure this out. If you have that kind of attitude, it goes a long way. And I think that people have good attitudes when they're successful at something. So I'd rather just work for 15 or 20 minutes and let the child beg for more, and you say, no, that's enough.
Right.
Because, hey, I like math. Math is fun. I like that bald guy. I like the blocks. This works.
Yep, definitely. And that is a treat. They do love watching the videos and connecting with you, and they see your love for math. And I think for parents who really struggle with math, I zoned out somewhere around 5th grade. And so I'm relearning so much through your books as I'm teaching my children. But I think it's good for them to see someone who is a math enthusiast and connect them with that and show how great it is. But they, going back to the manipulatives, because I think that is such a huge part of it. And I've got 2 who are on the autism spectrum, and then the one with ADHD and dyslexia, and then a 4th, little girl. But she's not even ready for math yet, so we don't know how she'll do. But with them, I feel like it's so important for them to form a relationship with it. And I think that's just easier through the manipulatives. And I think if they can see it visually, that really helps them to generalize the concepts. And I think that's what I love how you said, it's just a miracle. I just did what God told me to do, and it just worked out. Because I know it has. I mean, through numerous homeschool boards, Math-U-See is touted as, special needs friendly. And this is great for your kid with autism. This is great for your kid with dyslexia, and there's a reason for that. And I think, like you said, you're just using the whole brain, as much of the brain as possible, and not just going at it from one angle.
And for those that don't know, we're being very articulate by calling them manipulatives. The fancy word manipulative really represents little plastic blocks or cubes. And they're like Lego. I know enough not to say Legos. So they're
Right.
they're like Lego in the sense that if the nub, the little part on the top, like the little mesa, is showing, that's positive, and if the bottom, which is the cavity, is showing, that's subtraction. This is really hard to show them without showing them. But anyway,
Yeah.
so and the reason that we use these blocks is because when I was a high school teacher, and by the way, I was doing really well as a high school teacher. I was getting awards, and next thing you know, I'm doing workshops for homeschoolers on how to teach upper level math. And that's when I first ran across manipulatives being used. And one night I spent a couple hours watching, it was a semi-Montessori presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching this presentation, all these light bulbs were going off in my mind because I knew how to do everything he was doing on paper, but I didn't know the why behind it. And once I saw it, then I saw it. So Math-U-See, the name itself, is kind of a pun because when you see it, you see it. And,
yes.
And it's not just, as you said, which is, by the way, one of my favorite testimonials, it's not just for children, it's for adults. Because if I had my little manipulatives and everybody was watching, I could show you a whole bunch of math because I understand it now and I have a tool. And what the videos are for is so that you can let me teach you and you can learn how to use the tool and then you teach your own children. But if I had to do it again, Cindy, I would call this Math You Understand.
Yeah.
Because the reason I'm using the blocks is just to help children to understand math and not just be memorizing or rote or,
Right. Right. Okay. I'm going to rabbit trail for just a second because that triggered something about memorizing. Going back to the math facts, I've got two main questions that I hear over and over. So I'm going to ask you one now. It's about the math facts, and then we'll move on to the second one. But do you have a tip or some kind of trick about memorizing math facts? What would you say is the best way? And I know you integrate this into the curriculum, but just in general, what are your thoughts on memorizing?
Okay. Recognizing that I'm talking to people that probably have special needs kids.
Yes.
The first question, if you came up to me at the booth and says, look, my child is 12 years old, he still doesn't know his addition facts, give me another strategy. First of all, I would say to you, do you think your child has the capacity to memorize them? Because nobody knows that better than you. And if you say to me, well, he knows the doubles and he knows +1, but the rest of them are a struggle, then I would say, God bless you, use a calculator. No, I'm not kidding, because there's a lot more important things than just learning your math facts. Now, if your child has what I would call a typical learning, with no struggles, no inefficiencies, I think anybody can learn their math facts. And the way we do it in the program, first I do the ones, and then I do the twos, and then I do, making 9, making 8, etc. And that works.
Right.
And I'll give you another resource. Free, no charge, freehomeschoolmath.com. No spaces.
Okay.
Freehomeschoolmath.com. There's about 4 or 5 videos I did on there for homeschoolers. It was at a conference in Illinois, and one of my sons came and filmed them. And I think I have one just on addition facts. I have one on multiplication. You can watch.
Okay.
But I would do whatever it takes to help them get it. But the first question is, can they get it? And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life worried about that. I mean, half the world uses calculators right now, and they're okay. So, I think that's if you can memorize them. But if you don't have the capacity, let it go.
Let it go. So I think that's the question is, and to use your example, I've got a 12-year-old son, still doesn't know his math facts. Do we just stop and just do math facts, or you just move on with life? And my husband was in the Marines. I'll say adapt and overcome.
Well, what some of the things that I do is I still want them to use the blocks, because when they see the blocks, it helps them to get the big picture and it helps them to estimate. And when you're using a calculator, sometimes estimation saves you from making some grievous errors, because you look at it and say, can't be that.
Right.
It turned out you hit the button twice or you forgot the decimal point or something. So I still want to use all the brain as possible, but you might say, let's try to do your homework the best you can, and we're going to check your answers with a calculator, and you end up sneakily teaching them how to use a calculator.
Right. Okay.
And
All right.
nowadays, you don't even have to use a calculator. You can just say, Alexis,
Right.
what is 6 times 7? So, yeah, but using the block still is going to help them to get the concept and help them to estimate.
Definitely. Okay. All right. Another thing I love about Math-U-See is that the way you arrange the books, it's like in a statement. They're not grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. It's alpha, beta, delta, and you go in order. I mean, there's a system to it, but tell me why, and I do love this, you don't focus on grade levels, because a lot of friends will say, oh, I'm so behind in math. I'm so behind in math. And my argument is always, no, you're not. You're exactly where he needs to be. What is the point of pushing through and not actually learning it just to say, I'm on grade level, but I don't know half of it, So I love that about Math-U-See. So talk about the importance of focusing, that paradigm shift of we're going in order where we need to be versus he's in 6th grade. He should know this.
So we're not on a conveyor belt, and we don't have checkpoints because we're homeschooling our kids so we can move at their pace. And if they're quick in math, we're going to let them go faster. We've had some kids finish Math-U-See when they're 13. I mean, calculus and everything. Because you're using the hands-on stuff, you can see stuff sooner and you can move quicker. We've also got some kids that are in their 30s that still haven't done Algebra 2. It's one of my sons. So, the point is that you're never behind, you where you are. And the reason that the books are laid out the way they are without numbers on them or grade levels is because everybody's different. And firstborns are different than secondborns. And you know that when you have kids. And some kids are born with the math gene. Some people aren't. And it's okay. I still think everybody can learn it, but they just have to move at their own pace. So the reason we don't have grade levels is because I don't want anybody to ever think that they're behind. And maybe I needed to have a little sermon for the parents that are listening. Do not give in to peer pressure, especially if you're in a co-op. Because that's where peer pressure happens, when everybody sits around and talks about their wonderful achievements of their children. Just let it go and talk to them about chickens or something. But you gotta change the subject, because if you can't multiply well, division is going to be really hard. And if you can't multiply and divide, fractions are going to be really hard. And if you don't understand decimals and percents, then pre-algebra is going to be really hard. So there is a sequence to math, which is why we use the Greek alphabet, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. Right. But how fast or how slow you move through the sequence, only the parent is the one that knows that. Now, if it's really, really slow, then you need to consult a learning therapist, and maybe they need vision therapy, or maybe they need some other neurotherapy or something. Right. But most people just move at your child's pace. Now, if they refuse to work or, they're sleeping, you know what I mean? You're the parent, you're smart. But just move at their pace. And if they are getting it, let them loose. Don't hold them back. And if they're not getting it, spend time. We even have a worksheet generator on the website to make more worksheets for kids with special needs, which is a free service.
Yes, that's great. And you do have, and again, I'm going to link to this. You do have a lot of nice free resources on the website. And this brings me to the next one, because I want to talk about the kid who's transitioning out of school into homeschool. And I know there's a placement test that you can take online, but on your website. But talk to me about any tips that you would have for the mom who's, maybe just pulled her 2nd grader and wants to switch over to Math-U-See and doesn't really know, because there's no grade levels, because it's not aligned with necessarily what he was learning in the public school system. What are your thoughts on transitioning? Well,
there are wonderful resources on the website, but there's also wonderful customer service help, which you can call you can get the number. I forget what it is. It's 188 something math. But so you can call, you can talk to a customer service. They can help you with placement, or you can take the placement test. But generally, if I'm at the booth and Cindy comes up to me and she says, I just pulled my second grader, so we're going to play. It's you and me.
Okay.
And I could probably find out where they are in about 3 questions. And I would just say, how are they with their addition facts? And if you say, oh, nailed it. And I'd say, how are they with double digit addition? No problem. And then I might say, well, how about regrouping? Oh, we're just starting to work on that. Well, that tells me you're in beta.
Okay.
Because alpha is adding and subtracting single digit facts. Beta is multiple digit adding and subtracting with regrouping. And then if you haven't started let's say that you did all know all that, then you're just starting division. Well, that would be delta. So some of it's pretty easy, but for the kid that maybe wants to start a little bit further along, like a 6th or 7th grader, and doesn't need to go back and learn all that, you could have him watch those videos I mentioned on free homeschool math, just to get familiar with using manipulatives and how Steve operates. But then take a placement test. And if you have any questions, call the customer service rep and they'll help you place.
Wonderful. Yeah. And that's, I've dealt with the customer service before too, and they're great. And like I said, the resources online are wonderful. I think that's what also sets your company apart. Math-U-See is this big curriculum company, but it's very, very personable. You don't feel like you're dealing with some massive company that doesn't care about your child. The way the curriculum's written and presented, it does feel like you're not in it alone. You can definitely connect with people and get help if you need to.
Amen.
Yep. All right, Steve. Well, I know we touched on special needs kids. I love your answer, but do you have any kind of takeaways for the listeners? Do you have what would be your solitary message to hang on to for us?
Well, we just had our first Parents Know Best conference this winter, and we're going to try to do it again next winter. And I would say to the mom or dad who's listening is trust your gut. You know your child better than anyone. And when I initially made those videos, back when they were VHSs, they were not for the kids. Even though I recorded them in front of an audience of parents and kids, they were more for the parent, because I thought the parent knows better than anybody their child's needs, their capabilities, their learning propensities, and all that. And if I could give them the knowledge and the tool, they could adapt it to their kids. So when it all comes down, we turned out that kids like watching me on the videos, and so we released them. So the kids, but no, especially up through pre-algebra, I think that parents should be working along with their children. Not every single minute and every single day, but especially when you're introducing the new lesson and going over any areas of concern. But once they get up into Algebra 1 and geometry, they could probably do it fine on their own just by watching the videos. And if they really get stuck, we have online classes. But I just can't. God created family. To me, as soon as he created the world in 6 days, he took a break, and then he created marriage and said, be fruitful and multiply. Yep. And so the basic fundamental unit of our culture is the family. And so we need to honor the family and honor the parents to teach their kids. And I love what you said, because if a parent calls me and says, Steve, should I homeschool? I would say this: are you willing to learn along with your children? Yes. If they say yes, then they're good. I don't say you have to be an expert, but if you're just willing to work along and learn along with your family, you'll be great.
Yep. And I love that. When we started homeschooling, I had a friend who told me, when I had shared, I was a little nervous about the content. She said, you've just got to be 1 week ahead. And I thought, man, that's it. You're right. I just have to know enough to teach them this week. And I mean, you're really, I'm recapturing or reclaiming my education alongside of them. And that's what's so beautiful. But I love that you put the ball in the parents' court. That's a message that I'm constantly talking about. And that's even my slogan: encouraging and equipping parents, because that is, you are your child's best advocate, best teacher. That's the way God set it up. I love how you describe the family. It's just beautiful. So, all right, Steve. Well, we are looking forward to Stewardship coming out. When do you think that's going to release?
It's being finally proofed right now.
Wow. As we speak. Okay, so right now it is March. So hopefully by the end of the month. April. Yep. Great.
For sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll look for that in April. And Steve does lots of conferences too. Are you going to be anywhere anytime this year?
This last weekend I was in Fort Worth. Next weekend I'm going to be in Greenville, South Carolina at Great Homeschool Conferences. And then the next week I'm going to be in St. Louis at Great Homeschool Conferences. I have the website Building Faith Families. There's a calendar on there that I'm not even sure where I'm going to be all the time. I know where I'm going to be. Here, let me look. Okay, yeah. Then I'm going to be in Alberta, April 11th to 13th, and then I'm going to be in Cincinnati at the end of April. Then I'm going to be in Dallas, and then Michigan, and then Illinois, and then Virginia, and then Pennsylvania. How's that?
Wonderful. So that's lots of opportunities for listeners to go out and find you. That's wonderful. How can we find you online if we can't get to a conference? buildingfaithfamilies.org. Okay. And you've got a podcast as well through that website,
and a
correct?
Newsletter and a whole bunch of free resources and talks that I do for nothing. You can listen to them or watch them.
That is awesome. All right, Steve, thank you so much for being on today. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome, Cindy. Thanks for inviting me.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.